Hi friends, welcome back to Crash and Learn. It's been a little bit since we've done one of these videos, but today I thought we would do some of our own carnage. We've seen a lot of carnage from all over the internet, but I want to do some of our own. So let's check that out. We're going to talk about breaking thwarts and breaking bones on the Pit River. So we're out on the Pit River, Northern California, 35-foot waterfall. It's a big drop. Kaylee decided to fire it up for the first time and
fired it way up. You know, if you're gonna go out, might as well go all the way out. So I have a spiral fracture to my humerus in 4 parts. Ended up with a plate and 15 pins. So pretty exciting. Got some real sutures for Halloween. Pretty spooky.
yeah, you're kind of like a mummy right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at this and we are going to break it down for you because we got really lucky to have a lot of camera angles so that you can learn from our mistakes. All right, here we go. Dropping off. Boom. Kaylee hit and slip down. It happens so fast in this. This is real-time footage, so this is like how quick it happened. I didn't even know anything went wrong. I obviously she lost her footing, but I thought we were good. And then this part is the crazy part where you're like, oh my God. So going back, I slowed it way down. Like you can't even see the break happening here. You just see like going down. I thought you were fine.
Yeah, so we landed pretty well in a raft. It's always a hard hit, but kind of lost my footing. I was confused about what was going on as well, but I remember like there was a lot of pain in my humerus area, and I was in the bottom of the boat trying to get up. And then about here, you see my eyes get really, really big because I hear my boating partner say, "We need medical," and then I see my arm swing in front, and I had no control over it. And that was the weirdest thing to see, like your own hand that you can't control. It was pretty wild.
Like the claw just comes out and is like,
yeah, just like it was like a fish. It just kind of went swinging. And then from here I realized, oh shit. So here I look at it, but here's us going down the falls. I held on, palm up. It's really good. I was really concerned when I watched this that it might have been my elbow on top of the thwart, but as I drop, it's in place. It's totally fine.
You're pretty locked in here. Like, this is a really good position to be in. And you're pretty well locked in there. You got 4 points of contact. And then coming down right here, you can see the thwart starts to move away from Kaylee. She basically, like, kicks the thwart out.
Well, and right before that, you see I kind of start to free fall as well. So I've got 4 points of contact, but you do see me like lift above, like I start to float away from the boat. And then as we hit, that's when you start to see, you can see my foot at the base, and I'm kicking the thwart, and the thwart's already starting to move out of place.
This is why you don't want to lose contact with the raft when you're running big waterfalls. And a lot of people, we get hammered all the time online for letting go of our T-grips on this, but the T-grip is actually not the thing to worry about. I'll cover that in a different video, but the T-grip's not the issue here. So we'll see, Kaylee's kicking the thwart out, and then moving just a little bit ahead. There's some dimples in her dry suit, and in the previous shot, you could see those were kind of lower. So her arm breaks here in less than 1/10 of a second. Like this is where her arm breaks, and it's just so fast that it happens. So the arm breaks, and then it's because Kaylee went flying forward, and her muscles are just so big and strong. So here Kaylee's like kind of floundering around. Boating partner picks her up, and then we see this right here. Like my arm does not do that. It's like I can get to like here with my arm. Like that thing is going backwards at a 45-degree angle. So they know something's wrong. Nobody else does because nobody else can see this. Like for the rest of us on the shore, we were
Yeah.
like, oh, they stuck the landing. That was sick. And it went from sick to sickening.
And a lot of people had like gone sideways and landed sideways and flipped at the bottom and had a lot more violent landings, and couple people even went backwards and they were totally fine. So like we stuck the landing, looked good. I was like, why am I in the bottom of the boat? Why does my arm hurt? And then we find out a couple minutes later. And what's really cool is like there's no injury to my shoulder is fine. There's nothing to my elbow. The joints are fine. It was just the bone that broke.
So what happens when you spend most of your adult life boating. So here we're moving the arm back into place.
You could see me like moving my fingers. I was trying to grab onto something, but I couldn't actually move my forearm to like grab anything.
That was
really
a
bizarre.
we need medical right there.
Yeah.
So Kaylee tries to get up and tries to move around, but we go over here to us trying to wrap her up. Now, the interesting thing about this part, and we'll talk about this at the end and some lessons that we learned, was that we ended up having some tape that didn't work, and then we used this kind of rubbery tape and a SAM splint to put her in place. And the issue is that we thought it was a dislocation at first because the dry suit's on, we can't see the arm, what's going on. So you thought it was dislocated. I thought it was dislocated.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it was broken up here because that's where the pain was. But I thought my elbow also might have been dislocated because I couldn't move my forearm either, and I had like no strength in it. But I remember looking down, wiggling my fingers, and knowing that, okay, I don't have like horrendous nerve damage, or I didn't break anything there where I could still move my hand. So that was pretty reassuring. So I'm kind of holding my own hand because otherwise I have no control over that arm.
But we don't know what's going on here. So we're just trying to package Kaylee up and immobilize her as much as possible. So I'm just applying some tape around her wrist. And I checked, and her upper like bicep area, like the top of the bicep, was not painful. So that's why we kind of thought it was a wrist, because it was like lower humerus area. So over here you see I'm going to go under her arm, and I am going to just tape her up here. And one of the things that's interesting about this, and I think bears a lot of scrutiny, is that like I kind of feel like no matter how much training you do, you're like never ready for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it happens and you train for it, but like you're not like ready for it to happen. Like the circumstances in the field are always going to be different. Pain manifests in different ways with different people. And the good thing is we got Kaylee talking, and she's like kind of narrating what's going on here, which is really funny.
I was trying to figure out like what was broken and what hurt. And
so what's cool here is like you can see we've already got our cam strapped up. We have one cam strap around your forearm to hold your forearm in place, so it's not going to move around. And then we're putting another one around your wrist so that we can further help immobilize that arm, because we just don't want it moving. When I talk to the doctors and the surgeons, they're like, oh yeah, it's really good. Like there was no bone splintering that like drove up in weird ways, because that can sever your nerve, or it can sever or damage your artery. And so there's no internal bleeding or anything that was really happening. Well, that we know of. We haven't really seen it.
Yeah.
But we did see it, and it wasn't turning all sorts of crazy colors, either in the field or driving to the hospital. So that was pretty good. And at this point, we had talked about it. I had suggested we walk you out.
Yeah, and I remember looking, there is a trail that's fairly close, but it was so steep. That was presented. I knew it was a bumpy ride, but I was like, hey, it's going to be much faster and easier just to paddle out. It's going to be painful for me, but I'm willing to take that rather than hiking out for an hour and a half when we could be done in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I want to say it took us like 25 minutes to paddle you out. We were trying to go pretty fast, but I was also trying not to jostle you around a lot. So anyway, we're packaging you up here. I mean, this is a big part of immobilizing and packaging someone up for transport. I mean, it's a really important part of it. And we'll talk about this in a little bit with our parting thoughts, but we have some video of taking Kaylee out of there and what that looked like. But just getting her immobilized, like, this is the thing about boating. You have to improvise.
Yeah.
Like, cam straps are really amazing when you need them, just to, like, work in a pinch and get them where they need to be. So if you need to package somebody up, cam straps are great. You can.
And I think it's good that it was kind of like colder boating, so we had lots of layers on, so that provided a lot more like cushioning. So I was able to move the cam strap a little bit closer to over my dry suit, so it provided a little bit more padding. So it's something to think about, like if you are boating in the summertime, of maybe having a couple extra layers or something like that in your first aid kit, in your dry bag, just to provide something to work with.
That's why if you check out our beginner rafting series and we talk about the boat bag and what's in the boat bag, we talk about this, having extra layers just in case. And we'll see why in a minute, because here we've got Kaylee in her onesie. We were able to get the dry suit off, which was really fascinating.
I didn't want to tear the dry suit. I was like, I think we can do it. It was only around my wrist, and then I had like the Aphrodite, so I was able to kind of wiggle out of it. But, you know, we can save the dry suit. Let's do it.
that was one cool thing about the Aphrodite, was like it was so easy to get off of you.
Yeah.
Like, because it's got that big wide clamshell. We're here cutting Kaylee's arm off. Here's the reveal.
I'm gonna cut my arm off.
The arm of your onesie. But yeah, I had a really hard time doing this actually too, because I had to cut through a lot on this onesie.
I remember Lexi,
so
you can't hear
bad.
it, but Lexi's like, right before we do the reveal, she's like, let's take guesses on what color it's going to be, which is really funny. So, you know, because I was stable, kind of like making some jokes, helps keep, you know, everybody going, and we're doing what we need to do, but we're not like getting stuck.
It's kind of hard to describe, but like, I find this like in like I certainly have this in my life. Like, I will go into a situation, and we'll go in a situation and like that we don't know enough about, or don't have enough experience with, and then all of our applicable skills like pop out of our head. It's just like you kind of stand there and you're just like, I don't know what to do, guys. Like, I've seen that happen with, you know, I've certainly done it. I've seen it happen with less experienced boaters. Like, it happens to everybody. I mean, you know, talking with some of the guys who work for Cal Fire and stuff like that, they have these issues with new guys too. They'll show up at a scene and just like, there's like blood and guts and stringy stuff all over the place, and people are like, oh my god, I don't know what to do.
This is not using our imaginations anymore.
Yeah, this isn't us pretending in a class. Kaylee's making jokes right there. This is good.
Yeah.
I mean, she's in good spirits.
They're not supposed to bend that way, though.
Oh, God, that's awful.
So I had a wonderful boating crew around me that everybody was, like, helping out, and they would kind of switch. I wanted everybody to, you know, go take care of themselves, go get changed so they're not freezing, because it is October and it's cold. So, you know, everybody was doing really good at taking turns and making sure I was doing okay, and just going step by step with what needed to be done. Getting off like my onesie and my stuff and getting in warm clothes, and
we just immobilized it. In these circumstances, it's really good to have extra people so you can tag out. That's a really good point, is like tag out. And we kept doing that. Different people kept moving in, getting different equipment, getting it ready. And like, we knew it had to be done. Kaylee had to be immobilized. We had to pack up our stuff, like throw it in a vehicle and then get rolling. But she was stable. So that was good. But the other thing is like keeping her warm. Like, it's cold outside. Like, I was cold wearing a bunch of my layers in a dry suit. So it's really funny in the video, when you listen to it, Lexi's like, "Aw, so cute. Like, I'm taking care of Kaylee." And it's like, no, this isn't about cute. This is about like thermal protection, because her body is reacting to a major injury and you need to keep the person warm. So I always keep a blanket in my truck. And this is why I always do it, because when I get to take out or something like that, this is the exact reason I have a blanket. That, and I spend a lot of time in the snow. So, I don't know. Keep a blanket in your truck.
But I remember, like, it was cold. It wasn't that cold, but I was definitely shivering. because my body was so reactive to what was happening at the time.
So this is the thwart. This is what you did to it. Let's hop over outside and talk about this. That's what the thwart is supposed to look like. And this is what the strapping system does look like. So we got this piece tore out all the way through here. All of this tore out. Yeah, the welds even broke. Looks like this was welded together. But regardless, all of the stitching came out. You blew through a double stitched thwart, Kaylee. Wow. And you almost tore through this strap right here as well. So just looking at this, I mean, obviously, like, it snapped and got shredded. You put so much force on that and just basically ripped it out. And you can see here's another shot. Right next to my thumb, there is a rip going through, I want to say that's a box stitch of 2 layers of cam webbing. So, and cam webbing has a break strength of around 500 pounds, so 2 kilonewtons or so. It's a lot of force to put on it, especially when you have a double box stitch and 2 layers. Like that can take a lot of punishment, but obviously not enough in this case. So it did snap, and I think this is the main culprit. Is this is a catastrophic equipment failure. Like, it's just really nasty how this went down. So I think this is the main culprit of why it happened. And I think we kind of talked about that earlier, but really what Kaylee did was held on really tight and then blasted through that thwart. And I think because you spent your whole adult life paddling and part of your, young adult life, you have massive shoulders and massive biceps, and that's just, so swole. And so swole. So you just blew through that thwart, and your body kept moving, and the thing in the system that was weakest ended up being your bicep. Yeah, but you had your shoulder down too, which was really good because that could have been a shoulder dislocation really easily. So anyway, we have another fun little video here, and this is Kaylee in the hospital. So
these are a couple of residents that were absolutely wonderful, and they were putting like a plaster splint around my arm and my shoulder. So it went up pretty high because they weren't exactly sure. They wanted to immobilize the whole thing, and because the break was so high up that it ended up coming up really high. So I looked like I had really giant delts.
Well, the break was only on the lower half of your humerus, so that was good.
Yeah.
I believe they call this the results of finding out. I think that's what that is. I said, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's plenty of memes on the internet about finding out. So we found out today. So
this was pretty painful because when they apply the plaster, that's why there's a bucket there. But then they had to squeeze my humerus all together so that it would stay relatively in the same spot, and that hurt so bad. So they're just squeezing my humerus for a few minutes, just trying to get it relatively tight to immobilize it. It was really painful.
Watching him set that was not.
I want a lot of drugs here, and it still was really painful.
Yeah. I think they gave you some fentanyl or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, before they did that, but just watching it, I was that does not look good.
Yeah, it was pretty painful.
So, we want to talk about some more lessons learned from this. And one of the things, I think, is the actual evacuation. And we didn't get too much footage because I was having trouble with the GoPro, and I was more concerned about getting Kaylee out than I was playing with the GoPro. But this is what we got. So we got Kaylee in the back of the boat. We're kind of cruising down, and this...
Well, I would say like every evac's going to be different depending on your patient and what's going on wrong with them. And it just depends on, hey, are they stable? Do they need somebody to hold on to them? Can they hold on to a strap as well? Are you worried about a concussion? Do you need to watch them? And so for this one, and knowing the rapids that were left in the run, there's a couple big drops. It was better for me to be in the back and I could hold on to the strap, but in some circumstances I'll have somebody in the front so I can keep an eye on them.
And so I think in my estimation, unconscious, I go center compartment. Mobile, like most other injuries, like conscious injuries, I would put in a rear compartment, and then I generally prefer to put head injuries in the front compartment so I can watch them.
Both me and my boating partner had some hesitations going over at the top before we even went over. So, but ironically, like a lot of the things that we had hesitations about were like not actually a factor in the accident. It was just unfamiliarity with like that style boat, and we had been taking other boats all day. I'd
actually done an article about this, about accidents and how accidents happen.
Yeah.
I'll link to that if you guys want to check it out. But in that article, you know, one thing that I talk about, and I've talked with a lot of Class 5 boaters, is that it's not one thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's never just like it wasn't the thwart that broke that was the problem. Like, yes, there was a catastrophic equipment failure, and that was the main cause of it. But there's a bunch of stuff leading up to it, and
yeah. So our being uncomfortable with the boat at first, that was one thing. I had never done the drop before, so it'd been down the big one at least 3 times. And when I got to the boat, the thwarts were a little loose, so I went and tightened them, but I didn't spend a lot of time on it, and I really should have like reassessed. It had already had quite a bit of impact, but like. It would have taken really to look at it deflating those thwarts, and I was like, it's not that big of a deal, you know. So I tightened it and I moved them up because they had gotten further and further apart with each drop. So I brought both thwarts in a little bit and then really cranked on one of them, which ended up being the one that broke. Knowing that, hey, if you're gonna drop something big, like don't feel pressure. It was the end of the day. It was the last one. I felt like, hey, if I take this other boat I'm more comfortable with, that's at the bottom of the drop. Like it's gonna take another 20 minutes to get that up here, and then we're just not gonna have enough time. So feeling rushed in that, I didn't get to take the boat I was comfortable with, but just kind of like jerry-rigging something, it's gonna be okay, but like this is one of the biggest drops I've ever done. So I think paying attention to all those little red flags, or not all of them are red, they're like just like little flags in your heads of like, oh, I should do this thing, oh, I should do that thing. And if there's more than one, then you know you might want to stop. And it's okay to like say, you know what, I'm uncomfortable, it's just the stars aren't aligned, I don't feel 100% good to go, so I'm gonna wait till the next time that I'm 100% ready to go. So
a lot of people say that like the stars aren't aligned kind of thing. I don't like that approach because it's a little fatalistic, but and it's good that you brought that up, because a lot of people talk about this, and where I usually think of this is in the context of like all of these little things leading up to this problem that happens. It's not just like, it's not just one thing. Each thing adds a certain percentage of potential failure to whatever you're doing. So it's not just the one thing that happened, and all those little things. It's like you start stacking the odds against you with each little red flag. So that little nagging voice in the back of your head is all about
keeping you alive.
Yeah.
So we really wanted to also discuss your first aid kit and having that knowledge of what happens when you do come across an accident. So we want to talk about some different things that would have made our not triaging, but like figuring out how to bandage the person up a little bit easier.
I'm not a doctor, but I do play one on TV from time to time. So I think that's called triaging. Anyway, this thing right here. I did a quick lesson on this, but this little guy, little trauma shears, I think I paid $6 for this online.
Yeah.
These things are awesome. I have Kaylee's actual suit here that she was wearing, and I'm going to cut up. I just cut right through the zipper. Boom. Super cool. You can chop multiple times through the zipper, and you're good to go, instead of the stupid scissors that I had that could not cut through this thing to save my life, or to save yours in that case. So get some good scissors. For some reason, these were not in my kit. I think our box had made it into a different bag the day before, and so I ended up neglecting to grab this. But several people, when I asked them at the beginning of the trip if they had their first aid kits, they said yes, so I was not super concerned about it, but would have liked to have had some really good shears on me.
Yeah, so I mean, just making sure that you have your first aid kit with you, and just do a quick check to make sure you have everything you need. There's a couple extra things besides trauma shears that are really helpful. There's this stuff called vet wrap, and
cohesive bandage is what it's also called, or Coban.
It's Coban, but if you get vet wrap, it's cheaper because it's for animals, not people. It's the same exact stuff. But the bandage, it's really great because it sticks to itself, and it's water resistant. So even if you're in the middle of the river, you can bandage it up and it'll stick to itself. You don't have to worry about a lot of the tapes that come into first aid kits, like athletic tape, that don't really do much in dealing with like duct tape's not.
It would have been really nice to have this because it would have helped to wrap up the SAM splint and keep it in place a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it can get really wet and it's not a big deal.
It's really easy to cut off too. It's not super thick, but it stays in place really well. Yeah.
And the last little kit item is tape that works. I really like this stuff. It's like 3M Durapore tape, but it's like a athletic kind of tape, very sticky and fibrous as well. So it's kind of like a fabric tape. I really like it because it sticks to a lot of stuff. It sticks to itself, and just having good tape, because the first roll of tape that was handed to me was Gorilla Tape, and I was like, that's a little overdoing it.
Won't be able to get out.
Yeah, getting out of it was going to be a problem.
Yeah.
The second roll of tape had no stickiness left to it. It was kind of like adhered to itself. It was kind of like weirdly bonded to itself.
Yeah.
And then the third roll of tape was like a rubbery kind of weird tape. It stuck to itself pretty well, which was great. I would have liked something that had a little better adhesion, and the reason I like the cloth tape is because it does stick to that. But, you know, I'm not a paramedic, and I only play a doctor on TV, so that what it comes down to is using what you're trained to use. And this is always what we harp on, is like, you have to train with stuff and train on it often to figure it out. So if you're used to a certain kind of tape, or you train with it, or you did a first aid class, or wilderness first responder, or whatever it is that you have trained in, then use what you're trained to use. And this stuff is what I'm trained to use, so I use it because I know how to use it, and I know its limitations. And the same thing with Coban. I will use one of these two items to secure something because that's what I know how to do, and that's what I've trained on. So,
and it works in the environment that we're in, right? So if you're not training in the environment that you're going to be in, or most likely have these accidents occur, then kind of reassessing your gear to make sure it's going to fit that environment is going to be helpful as well.
And the last part of training is that, you know, I think I mentioned this before, but like, you're not always ready for it to happen, like in your mind and emotionally, and it's like, we're really close. And so, you know, I had to compartmentalize a lot to like make this happen, and just be like, I mean, in a weird way, I wasn't thinking about you as Kaylee. I was thinking of you as a patient, and how do I like deal with this injury? So if you're not good at compartmentalization, some people aren't. Like
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at it, but some people aren't really good at compartmentalization, and that's tough. And so sometimes your training will go out the window. And I talk about this a lot in like our beginner and intermediate boating series, is this idea that you are only as good as your lowest level of training. Or your lowest level of mastery. Sorry, I'm forgetting how that goes, but okay. So your lowest level of mastery, you might have a ton of training. You might have like wilderness EMT, wilderness first responder, all this stuff. But like if your level of mastery is only like basic first aid and CPR, then you're only going to be able to do basic first aid and CPR when things get crazy. And the other thing that we were just talking about was having pieces. Like everybody, if you have 5 people and they all remember a different 20% of the book of what you're supposed to do, relying on your team to help you through that. Like if you all have 20% of the book, then you have the whole book amongst 5 people. You just got to like figure out how you're all going to do that. So I think that's another important part, is like relying on your team. And like I mentioned, like hiking Kaylee out, and other opinions started coming out, and it was like, hey, how's she doing like with her pain level? And then like, are we gonna be able to hike her out, or like is it gonna be quicker to boat her out? Like all these things started flowing, and it's like you gotta be flexible with this stuff and like think about it a lot, because if you don't think about it, then
yeah, you might make it a slightly worse situation, if you're not able to adapt.
It's all about thinking tactically, because theoretically you could know a lot of stuff, but if you're not good at like actually deploying different techniques in the field, and you're not used to like that, thinking on your feet and applying your knowledge to the situation you're in, you're going to have some trouble out in the field and out on the water. So that's our recap. Anything you want to add on that adventure?
I think that's about it for today.
So if you have questions, as always, drop those below. Happy to chat with you more about that. Like I said, we're pretty lucky that we had so many camera angles to see this and view it in excruciating detail. So appreciate y'all bearing with us. If you want to see like the full uncut edit of all of this stuff together and just like watch like the whole thing happen, I'm happy to put that together. I'll probably, if you guys want to see that, drop that down below in the comments, and I'll probably post it on like Rafting Magazine Freemium or something, because it's going to take me a long time to put together. So if you could help us out, we appreciate that. Helps keep our junior team on the water too. So as always, be safe out there. Hope this is a good recap, and I hope you can learn from our mistakes. So have fun, and we'll see you downstream.